Russia and Japan, although in Japan it was relatively short-lived. So yeah, during the early modern era, the legendary combo of coffee and cigarettes was booming, essentially all over the world. And although some people wanted to ban it, there was really no way to go about it, as the trade was booming, and people wanted their caffeine and nicotine bad. It's so interesting to see the first discovery of a plant and then worldwide stores selling a product made from this plant pop up in the matter of 100 years. That's just, to me, so cool to see. Humans are honestly awesome, and that's why I love these time period videos. But we're still not done yet. The modern era. One of the first and most significant events that took place was the London gin craze. The English took their interest in Dutch courage a little bit too far, because now, after the king and parliament encouraged the production of gin to increase the price of grain and provide tax revenue, this resulted in the price of gin dropping dramatically, which exponentially boosted the consumption, particularly among the poor. Now that the gin was so cheap, any regular old person could afford to maintain a solid buzz 24/7, and this was causing havoc among the British people. I think there was a lot of reasons to drink during the early 1700s, especially in London. Religious dissent, rebellion, corrupt politicians, displaced people, all factors that were contributing to an unstable society. People were packed in tight, small, dirty rooms. Living and working conditions sucked. Most people were poor, so if there was any sort of joy or escape that you could afford, why wouldn't you? The upper class blamed the production of gin for all of the issues that British society was having, but realistically, the consumption of gin was only because of how low the quality of life was at this time. The government did eventually begin to control the gin craze through a series of what was known as gin acts. That alone is a pretty crazy start to the modern era. In 1832, a French chemist was the first person to isolate codeine, which is an alkaloid of the naturally occurring opium that at this point has been used for hundreds of years. Codeine is still widely used today, and in modern times is synthesized from morphine through a chemical process. Moving over to China, Emperor Yang Cheng prohibited the sale of opium for smoking. It was still legal to use medicinally, but if you were using it recreationally, you were killed. Although this didn't really have an impact on any of the trade routes consumption because officials were for the most part corrupt and the demand and supply chain was stronger than the government could keep up with. A separate French chemist also discovered morphine, which, like codeine, comes from the opium plant and is still used heavily to this day. And during the early 1800s, it was prescribed by physicians often for pain relief. But by the 1870s, physicians began to express concerns because of the morphine habit that it was causing, which is, of course, a pretty severe addiction. In 1869, the Prohibition Party was established in the United States of America, which was essentially looking to achieve widespread social reform about alcohol, and wanted to have legislation that would prohibit the sale and manufacturing of alcohol in the US. And seemingly one by one, countries began to prohibit different substances for different reasons. It's also at this time that we see a lot of interesting companies pop up. For example, Folgers Coffee Company was founded in 1850. Miller Brewing Company was founded in 1855. Lipton Tea was established in 1890. And Coca-Cola was invented in 1886. Besides companies popping up, we also see a lot of drugs popping up. We saw amphetamines being introduced. We saw LSD synthesized in the late 1930s. We saw oxycodone first synthesized in the 1910s. And in the 1940s, people in Japan got their first taste of meth. I wonder where they got it from. What were Japan and Germany up to in the 1940s? The modern day is honestly a super interesting time because we see the industrialization of all of these compounds that, for the most part, have been around for hundreds and thousands of years. And not only do we see a lot of companies pop up, but we also see a lot of legislation, specifically regarding to temperance and regulation. And we also see the first introduction of a lot of synthetic, or at least processed chemicals that we now would consider to be pharmaceuticals. It's truly crazy how fast things have developed. And I guess these are all more or less of a byproduct of the Industrial Revolution, which I would consider to be a huge landmark in civilization and human history as a whole. I bet you guys are curious about what are the craziest, scariest, and deadliest examples of drugs that people are taking in the modern day. And if that's something that interests you, then I have something for you. But unfortunately, it's not in this video. On screen right now, I want you to watch this playlist about the craziest drugs you've never heard of, in which I go into detail about specific chemicals and drugs that people are taking in the modern day. And if you haven't seen them yet, then I would definitely recommend giving them a watch, because it's crazy some of the things that people are making and taking today. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. And as always, trust me, bro.
Oh, there we go. I knew we had a beat. Shout out to the beat.